Jito is the largest protocol in Solana. It's roughly $2 billion of TVL. I think 16.8 million SOL in there. It was launched in 2022. And so, yeah, it's kind of been slowly grinding up to the right. And I think roughly 40% market share.
Where do you expect that 40% to go this year? Today's guest is Lucas Bruder, the CEO and co-founder of Jito Labs. Jito builds high-performance MEV infrastructure for Solana, and it has a couple products called the Jito Solana and the Jito Block Engine, and runs more than 27% of Solana's stake. This is the second episode of part of the Solana Sessions series that we're doing, focusing on founders building on top of Solana and elevating their stories. With that said, Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Excited to have you.
Yeah.
To start off, can you tell us a little bit about how you even got into the space?
Yeah, my story starts in 2017. I got into crypto kind of towards the end of that cycle, mainly from the investing standpoint. And yeah, just kind of stayed with it throughout that kind of bear market, 2018, 2019. 2020, started reading more into crypto and figuring out what's going on. You could kind of see that things were starting to change, and discovered MEV and just fell down that rabbit hole. I guess for people that don't know.
Yes, what is MEV?
Yeah, MEV. MEV stands for maximum extractable value. It's essentially the value that can be created and made by validators by having granular control over the ordering of transactions in their block.
That was still technical, Lucas.
Yeah, I'll go. Basically, the ordering of the transactions in the block matters.
Okay.
And there's software that you can make to make that ordering more efficient, to make validators and stakers more money. So we make validators and stakers more money. We've made roughly $1.1 billion for validators and stakers on Solana to date.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of jumping around here, but discovered MEV on Ethereum, went super deep down that rabbit hole. So I was working at a startup at the time. My background is in firmware and robotics, so kind of a nerd. I would do my day job till like 7 p.m. at the startup, go home, work on this MEV bot until like 2 or 3 in the morning. Just fell super deep down that rabbit hole. It was super competitive, and it felt like kind of this green field where it's like it's all permissionless. Anyone can trade. You can join and be competitive. It was super competitive, and doing the day job at the same time wasn't really working out. So put that aside, discovered Solana. I think I did the first Solana hackathon. I think it was the Solana Ignition hackathon.
Oh, wow.
And just fell in love with it.
When was that?
2021. I think it was March 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of the OG Solana products and protocols started at the hackathon. I did that, fell in love. I think Toli and Raj and those guys, just looking at the team and taking my computer engineering background and looking at Solana, and it's like they weren't calling it IBRL at the time, increased bandwidth, reduced latency, but you could kind of see where things were going. And that just kind of resonated with me.
And that's why you chose to build on Solana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It felt like greenfield. It felt like there was a lot of problems to solve and like kind of foresaw a lot of the problems. And so, I met my co-founder and decided to start Jito in 2021. You
meet them at the hackathon, or you met them elsewhere?
I met them on Twitter.
As one does in crypto.
Yeah. So I put out a Twitter post, and then someone...
Looking for co-founder?
Yeah, said it was like looking for software engineer.
Okay.
And some guy named PwnLard69, very crypto, connected us.
You're like, yeah, this looks legit.
Yeah. I mean, it could have ended up very terribly. It's ended up extremely well.
Opposite, yeah.
We met up and kind of were finished flushing out the idea, and then started Jito and ended up raising some capital.
Wow. And that was 2021 to now, right? Why was there such a huge focus for you on MEV infrastructure?
Yeah, I think I mainly came of it from the engineering perspective. I thought it was super interesting problem. There's so many parties that are involved with MEV. You have the engineering side, and you have the traders that are all trying to figure out ways to make money. There's the economics and the game theory of it as well. And so I just thought all these things are super interesting. And at the time, I thought that there would be some challenges related to MEV on Solana. So kind of felt like a good opportunity to get into Solana.
Do you feel like those challenges have been alleviated or resolved since?
No, the job's not finished.
All right. When's the job finished?
I don't know. It's hard to say. We're not there yet. I think we're getting closer. The job is way harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, we today currently over 90% of the network runs our client. And yeah, we've
90%.
generated. Yeah. So 90% runs the client. And yeah, I think, let's see, we launched it in 2022. We made the network $3 2022. In 2023, we made $3.5 million. 2024, we made $650 million. And then we're right around 440 or 450 this year.
What do you mean you made the network that money?
Yeah, our software helps essentially make blocks more efficient. And there's basically people that are willing to pay to use our software to get their transactions included. And so all that value flows to validators and stakers on Solana.
Okay.
So if you're running the Jito Solana validator client as a validator, you make more money. If you're staking to those validators, you make more money.
Okay. Over the past 4 years, how do you think the vision for Jito has evolved since launching?
Yeah. I would say the stakes are much higher than we thought they could ever be. I think Solana had a very successful year. Felt like all eyes were on Solana. And so the stakes, I guess we're in a very fortunate position, but also the stakes are high. There's a lot of stakeholders involved. Trying to make everyone happy is super difficult. And yeah. But yeah, I would say that in the beginning, we were more focused on the kind of traditional types of MEV. So traditional forms of MEV would just be like the arbitrage and the liquidations and things like that. You have these time-sensitive events that people need to respond to. And our software focused more on that. And then all the meme coin stuff happened on Solana.
That it did.
Yeah. And then it
like
turns
99% of it, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that was an insane year. And that kind of made us rethink our software a little bit and what we were doing. So we started focusing less on the arbitrage and kind of traditional forms and just trying to make people's transactions land easier and kind of catering our software and tools towards like traders, essentially. Not just, and then I guess looking forward, it's like less about, obviously the meme coin traders are still important, but we want Solana to be the place where like the IPOs happen and things like that. So trying to kind of continue expanding the target user for our software.
What do you mean by IPOs?
Like
initial public not but like public market offerings.
Yeah.
On Solana?
Yeah. Why not?
Can you collaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, I think if I was debating about this with a few other people, and I guess this isn't my idea, but I guess the dream of this is that there are the thing that will bring, I don't know if like bringing Tesla on chain and Apple on chain as kind of these mirrored versions of whatever people are trading in TradFi is going to, I don't know if that's really going to bring people on chain. Except for maybe in the case of like the GameStop and these like crazy events where like people like Robinhood had to make people stop trading. The permissionless nature of Solana and blockchains really shines during those times. But I'm not super sure if people are going to come on chain to trade Apple. They want to come on chain for these chain native assets. It's like meme coins is a perfect example. Or protocols launching tokens. Or maybe someone will launch, if they're going to do an IPO, maybe instead of launching through like the New York Stock Exchange or something, it's just on Solana.
And Jito wants to help with that?
Yeah, well, we want to make software. We want to make sure our software is like catering towards those types of events in the future. I think that's what we're all working towards, is like more trading on chain.
Mm-hmm.
Like that the number of people trading on chain, the volume should only be going up, and want to make sure that we're contributing to that.
Mm-hmm. Do you see other opportunities to expand beyond Solana into other ecosystems, or it's like 100% Solana, no thank you?
No, we're 100% Solana. I think that we take the mindset, I stress this with our team a lot, it's like we don't just want to build on Solana, or we don't just want to like build on these other chains. We actually want to help move them forward and like do things that other teams can't and make them better than they would be without us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like during the bear, there was a lot of questions about Solana externally and some internally, but I think doubling down on Solana for us paid out super well. We'd kind of get like scolded for working on Solana, and like people are like, what are you doing? Like no one believed in the mission.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of 2023, there was just like this uptick in activity, and that kind of continued through 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think doubling down on Solana at that time worked out super well for us, and we're going to continue doing that and just focus on Solana.
When you could think back to those times when people were questioning why you were still on Solana, do you remember your responses or what you were thinking about? Okay, we want to stay here because XYZ. Like, what were you? Yeah.
I think a lot of the discourse was ignoring the core engineers at Solana and the work that was going on with FireDancer, which is another validator client that's extremely high performance. So we spend a lot of time and talk to the Solana Labs and Onza team, and just like knowing that there's super dedicated builders that don't care what people are saying on Twitter. It goes back to what I said earlier, like there's the IBRL meme of like making things faster and cheaper that will ultimately result in more people getting access to this compared to something like Ethereum, where the fees are just super expensive. It's really slow, and just like continuing to double down that vision. Tech only gets better. I can't think of any tech that has gotten worse. Like we've seen this crazy, like continued adoption of AI and ChatGPT and Claude and all these new startups, and tech's getting better. And that's like, I want to make bets where the blockchains are getting better, and Solana seems to be getting better the fastest.
How would you characterize your founder journey from day one when Solana was probably pretty small to day, I don't know how many days it's been, but now where, you are definitely an established entity within the Solana ecosystem. Solana is a very established blockchain.
Yeah. I would say definitely it's just learning every day, which is probably my favorite piece of it. So making mistakes early, whether it's related to hiring or like a lot of the operational stuff was new to me. So like, how do I even set up a C Corp? Like, how do I set up a bank account?
How do I do taxes?
Yeah. Exactly. And the bank account was really frustrating because, I'm sure you've heard of the Operation Choke Point 2.0. It's very difficult to get a bank account as a crypto kind of like software development company. So, getting rejected from the banks and trying to figure that out, and, kind of using not using specific terminology and things like that when you do that, to like, setting up Gusto and these like payroll services, to how do I hire people, to like building out not just an engineering team, which is something I've helped run engineering teams. I've been early at startups, so I've seen that, but the operations and people operations and building culture and vision and making sure everyone's rowing in the same direction. It's kind of changing from, I would say the overall theme is like changing my mindset from just being engineering focused to managing people and the organization.
What do you think you got right on that front, and what was difficult?
I think our culture is super good. we're a super small team at Jito Labs. So Jito Labs is 16 people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the Jito Foundation is roughly 8 people. So there's many other labs and development companies that are like pushing 50 or 60 people. And you have these huge foundations. And we were very cautious about who we hired, making sure we probably hired too late in many situations where we could have
How so?
just like engineering fires or other fires where it's like, okay, we need this now. And then the hiring lead time is like 2 to 3 months out. So not thinking that through, but I think that resulted in really good culture. I've been a part of super small startups from like 40-person companies to being the 3rd or 4th engineer at a startup. And then I've worked at larger organizations as well. And I always loved the small organizations. You just have a lot of ownership. You get eyes on all the pieces of the product. And I wanted people that wanted to do that. So that's been a good filter for us. So yeah, I would say the culture has been really good. And our head of people is Ashley has helped build that out a lot for us. So yeah, I would just say like running like a very lean and mean machine.
I feel like a lot of startups do hire a lot, especially if they raise a lot. They're like, oh, what am I going to do with this money? Let me go hire really smart people. And yes, that's a good idea. But to your point, you don't necessarily need to do that, right?
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of work that you can get done with small teams. There's less communication overhead. It's easier to pivot because you have less organizational inertia. If you're like a 60-person team and you want to stop working on this product and work on this one, you have to get buy-in from all these stakeholders and have all these meetings and all this stuff. And then like we can just kind of pivot on a dime if we need to.
So are you bearish on big teams?
Yeah.
Yeah. we don't like the big teams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I also was thinking in terms of like your journey, there's definitely a lot of growth there. And so it's arguably seen as a success story. Do you agree with that? Or do you feel like you're not at that point yet?
I think it's important I definitely recognize our success. And if I would like looking forward, I would not have anticipated it would have been this successful. And so from that standpoint, it's cool. But also, as I said earlier, the job's not finished. There's still a lot of work to do. And so definitely have to stay grounded and stay hungry.
What's the priorities for the job not finished slogan? What's on the docket?
Yeah, there's a few things. There's a lot of work on the MEV software and all the MEV on Solana. So definitely thinking hard about that. I think we're not afraid to run experiments and make changes and things like that. So thinking hard about that and getting the right stakeholders involved. And then, yeah, on Jito Sol, I would say there's a large institutional push right now, especially with the Solana ETF. So we expect Solana ETF this year. And there's a lot of discussion about staking as well. So thinking about how does Jito Sol play a role in that is pretty important for us. Yeah.
You talked about experiments. Can you tell us about a really good experiment that you made a bet on, and then maybe a not so great one where you're like, let's move on from this? Remember trying to move your assets between chains, watching the minutes tick by, wondering if your transaction would make it? Yeah, we've all been there. But here's the thing. While other bridges feel like taking the scenic route, Across is your express lane. Base, Arbitrum, Optimism, boom, boom, boom. Your assets move between them faster than you could say cross-chain. Across isn't just another bridge. When Uniswap needed the fastest, most reliable way to move assets cross-chain, they chose Across. Now millions of Uniswap users are swapping between chains without even thinking about it, because that's how it should be. Whether you're moving assets yourself or building the next big thing in crypto, Across makes cross-chain feel like the same chain. No more scenic routes, no more complexity, just 2-second transfers between chains. Ready to join the express lane? Head to across.to and experience what bridging should have been all along.
Yeah, let me think here. There's been some interesting DeFi experiments that have been done with Jito Sol. So maybe trying to incentivize, make a bet on a protocol or some behavior on chain that we think will be sticky. So ultimately, we want people minting Jito Sol. We want that to be sticky. We want them to keep it and not use other LSTs or things like that. And so sometimes you'll spend money on certain incentives for protocols and maybe it doesn't work out. But I think I'm not super involved with incentives. That's mainly Jito Foundation, but they're definitely running some experiments and kind of figuring out what sticks. It's getting in that fast iteration loop of like try run an experiment, collect data, see what happens, pivot if you need to, or double down.
Yeah. You brought up Jito Sol. Can you explain what that is? And then the staking side of things and the token and everything else in between?
Yeah. So I'll start with staking. So Solana is a proof of stake blockchain. And essentially you have the Solana token. You can kind of, I'm going to simplify this a lot. So this terminology isn't exact, but you can lock it up on a validator to give that validator the power to produce blocks and also vote on the next block in the blockchain. And so when you're staking, you are locking that token up. You're locking the SOL onto that validator. You can't use it. Well, with Jito Sol, you can think of it like a receipt token. So what you do is you put SOL into the Jito Sol stake pool, and then the pool mints you something called Jito Sol, and you get that back. And it's in the form of a token similar to Solana. So it's essentially a receipt, a tokenized receipt of the SOL that you put into the stake pool. And so that SOL is then delegated to one of the validators in the validator set for Jito Sol. So you can stake SOL, you're earning yield roughly like 7-10%, depending on what's going on. And you can then go use it in DeFi. Or you can use it for collateral, or there's a bunch of other use cases in DeFi, but also some of the CeFi rails as well.
How has demand for that kind of grown?
Yeah. So if you look at the chart, it's been up and to the right, which love to see.
Yeah.
And today it's the largest LST on Solana. Jito is the largest protocol on Solana. It's roughly $2 billion of TVL. I think 16.8 million SOL in there. It was launched in 2022. And so, it's kind of been slowly grinding up to the right. And I think roughly 40% market share. Very deep DeFi penetration. I think roughly 25% of it's in DeFi on Solana. So protocols like Camino, Drift, Orca, Radium, forgetting a lot, but it's pretty widely used in DeFi.
Where do you expect that 40% to go this year or in the future? Do you see the market share kind of growing?
For sure. Yeah. I think thinking a lot about the institutional adoption, those things are pretty painful. They're not 16 person teams or 100 or 1,000 person orgs.
Working with institutions.
Yeah. So they just think about things differently than we do. So understanding how they think about things and what are the risks involved with Jito Sol, and then but getting buy-in from all the stakeholders, that can be pretty painful to go through that. And you're just kind of you just keep running through brick walls to get stuff done. But it's pretty sticky. Because there's not many other teams that have the capability to do that.
What do you think of when it comes to measuring growth? What metrics do you track? What's important to you? And how do you kind of sift through the noise? Because I feel like a lot of people like to track similar metrics, and like Jito's not a blockchain, so we're not going to talk about like those type of metrics. But for you internally, how do you say, okay, this is, up and to the right, like we just talked about, or this is something that's not doing so great. Let's improve this. What metrics matter to you?
Yeah. So when we're looking at Jito Sol, the protocol makes a percentage of the staking rewards from assets in the protocol. So there's the TVL is a big piece of it. But TVL isn't necessarily a network effect of a liquid staking token. So we think really hard about network effects. So what are the network effects of a liquid staking token? And how do we measure those network effects? So liquidity is a really big thing for liquid staking tokens, having deep liquidity. So where is that liquidity happening at? What is the retention on the liquidity for people that provide it? How do the incentives, if there's any incentives going to those providing liquidity, then how does changing the parameters of the incentives impact the stickiness? So maybe you start high and then you kind of taper off the incentives, so you're getting better bang for your buck. And then if you start to see kind of a drop in retention, then you can go back and maybe move the incentives back up and things like that. So I would say the success is like the TVL, the liquidity and the network effects of it in DeFi, having it be the go-to place, all the integration. Every DeFi app can use Jito Sol. So it's kind of like your one-stop LST for anywhere you want to go. Yeah, I would say those are kind of the main ways we think about Jito Sol. Yeah.
And what is the TVL and liquidity like?
So my numbers might be a little off. I know there's roughly 16.8 million Sol of TVL in there. So roughly $2 billion. And then the liquidity is somewhere like $60 to $70 million, I think. So it's by far the deepest, has the deepest liquidity of any LST on Solana.
How has that changed from like previous quarters?
I don't know off the top of my head. I assume it's getting deeper.
It's getting deeper.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Fair enough.
Yep.
How has Jito affected maybe market dynamics and dexes on Solana? We're talking about liquidity here, but I'm thinking of like maybe the bigger picture of what's going on within the ecosystem.
Yeah. So Jito, we're so intertwined with Solana and like try to do everything we can to help Solana DeFi, but also infrastructure. So definitely touch it from multiple angles. On the Jito Sol side, Jito Sol is in probably every Solana protocol. So contributing to TVL or volume or fees that these applications are generating. So there's like this wide spread of Jito Sol throughout DeFi. So that's contributing to their TVL and fees. From the kind of the infrastructure side and the MEV software, we helped out a lot with the congestion. So trying to make sure that people there's just so much activity on Solana over the past year that there's times where it's kind of hard to land transactions. So our software helped out a lot with that. So for people providing liquidity or making markets or keeping prices in balance by arbitraging. If the price of Jito Sol or some other asset is higher on one DEX than another, then allowing them to send transactions to equalize those prices so that users can get better pricing. So there's a few angles that we kind of touched on that.
And then on the broader DeFi side, what would you like to see built by other startups or improved upon by exchanges within the Solana ecosystem?
I would say whatever gives users the best pricing. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, but I think just focusing on users is the best way to bring more users on chain. I think that's something Solana's really good at too, because I guess it's ironic for me to say this as an infrastructure company, but there's not that much need to build a ton of infrastructure on Solana.
It's already done. No.
Job's not finished.
Right.
But
there's already infrastructure on Solana.
Yeah. So you have to focus on apps and you have to focus on users. So it is cool to see. I think other ecosystems, there's a ton of infra. For Solana, it's all about apps.
How do you think about attracting new users? Obviously, you guys have a fair amount of market share, but job's not finished. Where do you want to find them? New ones?
Yeah. I think for us, there's a few different types of users. There's like the retail audience. So maybe less than $10,000 or around there.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to find them through being involved with the community, kind of being thought leaders in the space and being a source of information and somewhere that they can go to trust.
Mm-hmm.
On the institutional side, that's something we think a lot about. And there is a lot of Solana locked in qualified custodians, which are essentially very, very fancy password managers, essentially. So trying to think about how do we get them involved in Jito Sol and staking Jito Sol.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes back to the institutional side where it's like, just have to run through a lot of brick walls and like get buy-in from a bunch of people. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there's good progress being made by the Jito Foundation on that.
Mm-hmm.
So
are you having conversations with institutional clients or potential clients?
Mm-hmm.
What do they want?
Yeah, they want a few things. There's definitely interest for using LSTs as collateral.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are an institution and you want to do some trading, you can post collateral in the form of SOL. But the one thing that would be better than SOL is SOL that's earning staking yield.
Mm-hmm.
So finding ways for institutions to use Jito Sol as collateral is one thing. And then, yeah, the ETP and ETFs are coming soon. And I think we'll have more clarity from the SEC hopefully soon on staking, liquid staking.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to figure out how do those people
Mm-hmm.
think and like what do they care about and
Mm-hmm.
how do they think about DeFi?
Mm-hmm. You've brought up LST a lot through this episode and liquid staking tokens.
Yes.
Why is that so important for people who don't know what that is? Why do institutions want access to it? Why do average, probably retail users want access?
Yeah.
Like, where's the kind of benefit to it that you see?
Yeah. There's a few angles here. One is that there's a wide variety of validators to choose from on Solana.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can be staking to a validator and maybe they increase their commission or something else happens to where your rewards are impacted. Or, I mean, there's over 1,000 validators on Solana. So it's a hard decision to make. It's like going into the grocery store and like, it's like, what brand of salt do I get? Like, I don't know. Like there's 100 different options.
Right.
And then, Jito Sol has a validator set that's managed autonomously. So it's always keeping an eye out for the best validators and rotating them in and out. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is like, you can have your cake and eat it too. So you can stake Sol, get Jito Sol, you're earning staking yield, and you can go use it in DeFi or CeFi.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to access both of those is pretty important.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then taking a step back from all of this, Lucas, how do you kind of look at the state of DeFi on Solana? What's important to you? What do you think other people should be watching in regards to the broader ecosystem?
Yeah, I think more teams coming to the space. There seems to be a lot of very talented builders. So I think we'll see more DeFi primitives and but there's also a lot of really talented builders on Solana too. And I think there's a pattern we're starting to see is that DeFi teams are starting to build out more and more products. So we're seeing a lot of cool competition between products. So teams building out different ways to let users trade tokens or different types of borrow and lend and things like that. So there's still a lot of hunger in the Solana ecosystem for these teams, not just to kind of work on what they worked on initially, but also just keep expanding their product offering.
Mm-hmm. And what about for Jito? What's the long-term vision for you?
Yeah, I would say that we want to continue expanding Solana's GDP. So get more people on chain and kind of channel that increase in GDP to stakers and validators. So finding ways to make validators and stakers more money and also make really want to focus on professional traders. So like the market makers and things like that help give users good pricing and bring price discovery on chain ultimately.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing, Lucas, you've been in the space for a while. Can you leave us with a piece of advice, something that you've carried with you throughout your time in this space?
I would say that I think it goes back to the team. Like you want to be very aware of the team you're building. Make sure you have culture comes from the top. So making sure that you're setting a good example for your team, being very aware of who you're hiring, making sure you're hiring not only the right people, but the right positions, making sure they're bought in. Like team is everything. So the team will make or break a company. So it's very important to focus on that.
I agree with that 100%. All right. Lucas, well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.